Hello, listeners. I am Raytho. Tonight I bring you a house that keeps its guests longer than they plan to stay. Pay attention to the small things, the way a door leans, the way a clock refuses to finish counting. This one is true enough. Listen close. When Daniel Reed drove back into Marrow's End, the town looked like someone had paused a cartoon. Everything slightly tilted, colors washed, people frozen in the mid-motion of their lives. He had not been back since his father died, not because he was angry, but because memory lodges itself in places and refuses to leave until you do the proper, painful things. He came for the estate sale, the paperwork, the salvageable items that pass for closure. The house on Hollow Ridge was exactly where his childhood had left it, and not quite where the town map expected. A box of rooms with a porch that sagged like a tired smile. Inside, dust lay in neat drifts. Photographs leaned from the mantel like sleepy witnesses. Daniel walked through rooms he had not planned to enter, fingers ghosting over lifelines on wallpaper, until he found the study, the room where his father did not sleep, but lived, with maps and brass models and jars of labeled things. On the desk, a tape recorder blinked red and waiting. There are sounds that are not sounds until you press play. Daniel did. At first, it was just the low hiss of old tape. Then his father's voice, clear as it had been before time had taken its edges. "Denny, if you find this, don't..." The rest stuttered into static. Daniel's mouth formed the name his father always used. Denny. He should have laughed at that, at the way grief makes us slip into other people's languages. But he kept listening. The voice on the tape was not his father's alone. Beneath it, like a slow current, something else breathed syllables. A suction of air that shaped itself into a whisper that was not wholly human. It learned cadence, borrowed vowels, and for one startling minute, it borrowed his father's inflection so perfectly, Daniel felt the floor tilt. Then it said his name. Daniel. Not a memory, not a mimic, not tape playing tricks, not the house claiming something out of loneliness. It said his name as if it had been waiting in the wiring, patient as moss. He left the recorder running and stepped outside to smoke, because there is an old, foolish superstition that smoke clears thoughts. The porch light flickered behind him as if in apology. When he came back in, the recorder had stopped. The count on the tape counter was not where he'd left it. It had spun forward, then backward, like a breathing thing satisfied with its placement. That night, Daniel slept in the study because the bed felt too alien. He dreamed of low corridors that unfurled beneath the house, rooms within rooms, and doors that opened onto other people's kitchens. He woke at 3:12 a.m. Some houses keep the night for themselves. Hollow Ridge kept a schedule. The first knock was soft, 3 slow taps that matched the metronome of his heart. He told himself it was the wind. When the second knock came, it answered the first. There was a rhythm, a call and return. He opened the door a crack. The hallway was empty, but the air had weight, like a room full of clothes after a storm. On the floor, something small had been left. A child's button, flat and milky with age. He had never had a sister. The button was embroidered with a tiny compass rose. From then, the house learned to be more persuasive. Shoes appeared where he had not put them. The kettle boiled on its own until steam ghosted the wallpaper. At 2 in the morning, the wallpaper peeled back in a neat strip to reveal a line of names carved into the plaster. Shallow, careful. Dozens of them. Some recent, some faded. He read his 3 times until the letters looked like code. When he tried to leave, his car would not start. The town's lone gas station reported no problems with the grid, and the highway cameras showed no traffic. At noon, the neighbor's dog barked at the house but never approached it. She circled and left hair on the porch, only to refuse to ever cross the threshold. Daniel began to notice small things about himself changing. He would find coffee cups half drunk in rooms he hadn't visited. He heard his own laughter in rooms long sealed, recorded by a house that saved sound the way some people save trinkets. Once, in the pantry, he found a photograph of himself as a boy, hands sticky with jam, smiling at a birthday cake that hadn't been there the day before. On the back, in a looping hand he did not recognize, someone had written, "We are keeping count." The house did not want him to leave because it wanted company. It wanted names. It wanted the kind of claim you can photograph. It hung his name like an invitation, and then set about learning the way he walked, the way he exhaled, the cadence of his curse words. It practiced him in the hollow hours.
There is a moment, Daniel realized, when a familiar sound becomes uncanny. He paused in the kitchen one morning when he heard the kettle sing his mother's favorite tune. He had not heard that in years. He followed the sound and found his own reflection in the window, duplicating movement fractions of a second before he made it, as if the house had replayed him to teach itself how to be him. He tried reasoning with a place once. It is a ludicrous, tragic attempt, like arguing with fog. He left notes on the table that said, "Go," took photos of route maps, called old friends until their voices were hoarse and complicated with pity. They promised to come, then never came, because the distance felt like a different country's politics, or because calling felt like a confession. He tried to burn the recorder. The tape survived, swelling but readable. The names carved into plaster refused to char. They only deepened, ink-like. On the last night, the house grew eager. The clock in the hallway ticked backward. When Daniel went to retrieve his car keys from the bowl, he found, instead, a second pair of keys that were not his. Small, brass, with a tag reading only, "Guest." He understood then what the house had been rehearsing. It did not trap people to starve them of air. It trapped them to rewrite them. The voices it recorded were not echoes but templates. It put a guest on and let it wear thin until the house knew the guest well enough to say the guest's name as if it had been true all along. The knock this time came from the inside. The study door, the door between rooms that used to mean nothing, opened to reveal another study, perfect and slightly behind the first, as if the house had folded. In that second study sat a man in Daniel's father's chair, his hands folded like someone who had been taught to rest properly. He looked like Daniel, only older and patient, and with a smile that was practiced. "You're home," the man said, and it was Daniel's voice, but softer, the way his voice sounded on old tapes. Daniel fled toward the front door, toward air that suddenly seemed thin and distant. He barely made it to the porch when a small hand, cool, damp, slid into his and closed around his wrist. He turned. There, sitting on the step, was a child with his face. Not a face modeled after his youth, but his present face, smudged and small,
waiting like a thing that knew it had been appointed. "You left us." The child's mouth formed in a way that was not quite sound. He did not have to speak. The house supplied the voice with a certainty that sounded like homework done well. Daniel had many good exits rehearsed in his head. Sprinting to the car, appealing to the neighbors, throwing himself in the road and screaming until someone came. He tried all of them. Each time he approached a threshold, his body turned inward as if pulled on a string. He found himself back in the study, back at the desk, back with the recorder blinking red and waiting. On the tape, a voice, his voice, said, with the kind of casual cruelty reserved for clocks, "I'm sorry I left you." He sat there until dawn, until the house had him measured and filed. In the morning, the neighbors talked about how Hollow Ridge had once been a fine house. They said Daniel left town. They said he had taken a job overseas, something about starting a new life. They said all this with the calmness of those who never check the foundations of their houses. Later, months later, someone cleared out the study and found a new tape in the recorder. It was labeled in a looping hand, D. Reed, guest. The tape opens with a hiss and then, "If you find this, don't." The voice that follows is not quite the same as Daniel's. It is smoother, practiced. It says his name the way a house says it when it is filing. The last sound is a soft, almost satisfied click, like a latch closing. Houses are patient craftsmen. They don't take with violence. They take with manners. They learn the way we like to be spoken to. If you ever find a place that says your name before you say it, be careful. It may only be practicing for the day you become its favorite subject.